Hello and welcome to the Damp Show with me, Damp Sam, and today's special guest is Robert Eaton. Robert Eaton is a two-time Hairdresser of the Year award winner, and they own two salons, one in Barnsley and one in Leeds. I'm not going to bore you with all the details because we're going to just start talking and get into it because Rob's one of my mates. Like I said before, I have all my friends on because I know they've got interesting stories. So you went to senior school. Is that in Donny? How did you get on qualifications wise? Were you an academic? Were you in top class? Did you enjoy school?
Yeah, I always did all right. Yeah, I did quite well. I just did my GCSEs and I did. I can't remember all my grades now, but I know I got A's, B's, and stuff.
I knew you were going into.
Well, I was always interested in anything arty, so anything to do with. I did quite well with art and design, and at one point I did think that might be a route I wanted to do. So I did some work experience at like a graphic design place whilst I was at school, and I really thought hard about, do I want to do that or do I want to go into hairdressing? But because I'd worked on Saturdays since being about 11 or something like that, and Dad's he's quite got quite strong ethics and values, and he really wanted to instill a good work ethic into both me and my sister. Yeah. So he used to take me on a Saturday and just like pay me a fiver or something like that for the day, and then that just kind of gave me a taste of what hairdressing was about. So I always knew that I loved that and I loved the creative side of it. And I used to go in the Saturdays from being young and think, God, it's such an amazing like buzz in the salon, and the atmosphere was great, and everybody was really kind of creative and chatting to everybody, and you meet loads of different people. But then also like the flip side of that was that I did all right at school. I could easily have probably stayed on and done that as well. But I think that I had a taste for maybe earning some money and just getting out of the school environment, and I just chose that career path really, and I've never really looked back. And I think when I was 15, I did an MVQ level 1, which I did at Leslie Francis in Barnsley. So after school, I'd go there, and I just did that as a sort of course just to get me started in hairdressing. So when I actually left,
is that because Leslie Francis has had a school?
Yeah.
So why didn't you go to Dimensions?
Well, but basically, we've always used Leslie Francis. So right. Yeah. So my dad's, all of our apprentices have gone there for the whole like 45 years that we've been in business.
Right.
And Dad knew David Francis sadly before he passed away, and he was just kind of one of those situations that the course was there. It was a nighttime course or an evening course, so I just decided to do it.
So did you start your apprenticeship in 1996 or something?
Yeah,
like that?
Yeah, 96, yeah.
So who were you a mentor? Were you specifically your dad, or did you get put with someone else?
It was it was my dad at that time, yeah. So there was other people that worked for us in the salon that really supported me and helped me as well. And he certainly didn't like give me any sort of favoritism or anything like that. It was just, if anything, I think it was the opposite way. I think you had to prove yourself more in front of team members that worked for us at the time. And Dad, I would say, was pretty strict, really. He was quite...
Can you remember when you did your first ever cut?
Yeah. So it was one of my friends that I went to school with, and I was really lucky. Lots of friends came and like had their haircut, and most people want a free haircut or colour or whatever.
Nick.
And it's not so bad now. Everybody's getting bald now. There's only a few people with hair now. So
ever coming for a colour?
Yeah.
Get out grey hard.
But yeah, in fact, she was stood up for about 4 hours while I was doing this haircut, and she ended up fainting actually because she'd been stood up under the hot lights in the salon, and it was just a one-lane cut, and I wanted to get it like really perfect.
How come she had to stand up? Just
because she got me long hair, so you have to when it's long like that, you get to stand up, and I wasn't even looking at her face or what she was kind of thinking. She was just stood up for ages, and the lights in the salon were really hot, and the next minute she just kind of bang hit the floor because she'd been stood up for so long. So yeah, that was my first experience. But like the stuff I did in the salon beforehand, I mean, I was always kind of with clients, and I think one of the biggest things about the early stages of any apprenticeship, and particularly in hairdressing, it's the people skills aspect of it.
Yeah.
So learning to talk to different people, which is not an easy thing. You're a good talker, Sam. You
not
could
for a long period.
No, and changing your conversation depending on who you're looking after as well. So that was one of the things I learnt about the most, because in hairdressing, you could say 50% of it is hairdressing, but the other 50% is the other aspects of it. So personalities matching. It's also about the environment people are in, the customer service, the other things that you provide in the salon as well. So
and what people don't realise is obviously you've got to be kind of, as soon as somebody comes in, you're up and talking to them and
Yeah.
but they don't realise that you've got stuff going off in background, so you're up and down, but you've got to try and keep that same
Yeah,
level.
I was chatting about this to somebody who works for us in Leeds, and he's a really like flamboyant, strong character, and he feels like when he's at work, his clients expect him to be an entertainer, and like he's on show all the time, and you can see sometimes his energy levels just draining a bit, and towards the end of the day, you know, he's knackered, not because of work or hairdressing, but just because of his having to be on show and to talk to people a lot. And that's one of the things I like about working in Leeds. The fact I've got like a 45-minute or an hour drive home. It's a bit of like chill out time and just come down time from what's been happening at work, and then you get back home and it's full on with family life and, you know, talking to Libby and everything else.
I imagine as well. You've probably learnt not to do it, but do you have a lot of tea and coffee? Because
during the daytime,
so you like sort of, you know, by end of the day, like I said, you're going to be eyes of
Well, hairdressers either, you know, a lot of them are smokers, so like they have a cigarette break at some point during the day in between clients, or you might drink a lot of cups of coffee or a couple of sips of coffee. So by the end of the day, like you say, you might have maybe had like 10 cups of coffee or something.
I know. When did you just kind of think I want to go into colouring side of it, or
so
trichologist?
So what happened there was basically the hairdressing industry changed over recent years. So at one point it was all about the haircut. So if you think about like the 70s and 80s, it was haircuts and perms, and you know, it was very much that era of hairdressing. And then what happened as you moved into the 90s and 2000s and beyond, it's been much more about, well, all aspects of hairdressing. So the perming market disappeared. Haircuts have still been around, but everybody started to grow their hair longer, so people didn't have to have their hair cut quite as much, and colour became a big thing. So, and that was big colour transformations. It was balayage, all the things that you see now still really, and also this was probably Dad's encouragement as well. Dad cuts hair, but he doesn't do anything else, so that was because of his training at Vidal Sassoon, and he always found that sometimes a bit restrictive as well, because if you're going to do one thing in the hairdressing industry, you can only just do that one thing. Whereas if you could do everything, you've got a lot more opportunities. So I decided to learn everything, and the colour part of it I always found really interesting, and also it was just part of what was happening within hair at that time. So it was a bigger movement in hair. Everybody was growing their hair longer, less about strong haircuts and more about changing colour as well. And I also quite like the, you know, working with hair colour is about chemicals and looking at what you can do with changing the actual hair fibre and structure itself. So I found all that part of it really interesting as well. So I can still cut, and actually I probably do more haircutting than I do colouring day to day, but it's just I promoted the colour side of it more. And that was an intentional thing as well, because if you think about the work with product companies, they're all colour houses. So L'Oreal, most of what they sell is hair colour. Weller is the same, Schwarzkopf the same. They're all, that's what they promote. So if you're trying to work with a company, it's pointless cutting hair, because that's not what they don't make money from that, but they do from hair colour. So
what did you do? Obviously you made a decision in your head that you wanted to start doing colours. Did you do some research yourself, or did your dad say what you need to do is you need to contact these? Or
no, I mean, and it wasn't like just one decision like that. It just kind of happened over time. So like my apprenticeship, so I started in 96 officially, and I qualified by the time I was 18. So in 98, I was on the salon floor, just kind of building my client base up, and at the same time going away and doing courses and like trying to further my knowledge and education on different aspects of the hairdressing industry. So that was all happening at the same time, and I did that for, I still do it now. You're always learning about different things, but at that particular point, I did it a lot and went to London on various courses at either Sassoon's or L'Oreal courses, or different things that were learning from industry experts at that time, learning from who I regarded as industry icons at that time as well. So people like Charles Worthington or Trevor Sorby, people like that were big hairdressing names, certainly in the 90s. So I did that, and then that kind of all set the foundation there for me to decide what direction I wanted to go in, and led me on to entering competitions and just getting involved in other things in the hairdressing industry as well.
But you went to a college in London, didn't you? To do your colour.
No, so what I did in London was I did some work at like advanced academies. So Vidal Sassoon have academies down there. So I went down there for like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a bit longer sometimes on intense courses. And then L'Oreal, because that's who we worked with at that particular time, they have like a studio and academy there. So I used to just go down all the time, just on courses, and got into doing so many things I did at that particular time. So like assisting at Fashion Week or graduate Fashion Week, going to watch other hairdressers on hairdressing shows, assisting on shoots. A lot of assisting people and like watching people. So although I had a really great, strong foundation with Dad, he always pushed me to do more outside of our like family business basically. And at that point we'd got the one salon in Barnsley, which I loved working there, but obviously there's only so much that happens in a small town. So to get out and about and to meet other people, and this is obviously before social media as well, you had to get on the train and go down to London and meet people basically.
And I don't know whether it were called that at the time, but what you were doing, you were networking, weren't you? And making your circle a lot bigger, meeting people and just
So what I used to do, like, I mean, Dad used to take me. We'd go and watch hair shows or competitions, and at that point, that was the way of you meeting people, and you'd go and introduce yourself and say, if you ever need an assistant, I'm more than happy to come down. There's no, we'll pay. There's no cost to you. I'm happy to do whatever, and that's how you got to know people and learn from people.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's a bit different. You just send a quick direct message to somebody, and you can connect with somebody. And I'm not sure which is better, really. I mean, obviously we can connect with people all over the world now, but that direct face-to-face contact is probably better, I think, in some ways for building relationships.
Yeah, there's no emotion in a text, is there? So you can't see what people are saying if they're like kind of, unless you put an emoji on it, like I suppose. Yeah, smiley face or something. Kind of.
I mean, like connectivity at the moment, and how it's amazing that you can talk to people all over the world. I mean, if we talk about our own industry, I can speak to hairdressers anywhere, and actually there's amazing work being done all over the world, whereas at one point UK hairdressing was the strongest in the world, and still is regarded as that way, but now there's a lot of great hairdressers in Australia, there's a lot more in America than there used to be, loads all over Europe. A lot of Japanese hairdressers are really technical and do amazing work as well, so there's a lot of brilliant hairdressers everywhere.
So fast forward a bit, and we'll get on to when you got your first title, hairdresser of the year. Yeah. Because when I first met you, all I talked about was this, and and I'm not being Nostradamus at all, but for some reason I just got in my head, because obviously Andrew Barton won it in 2006, and he was from Barnsley, and because Barnsley's got such a good pedigree in the hairdressing industry, I don't know, and then you opened that Leeds salon, and I just assumed that you would get it, and I talked about it with you. I know you've put loads of hard work in, and it's not as simple as that. So just talk us through that.
The hairdressing. What happens with in the hairdressing awards? You can enter it anyway. So for many years I've entered it in different categories of that. So I'd won Northeastern Hairdresser of the Year, so I'd entered that myself, and we won that 3 times. And I'd also won one on a colour category, and I'd won that 3 times. And that's something I'd just wanted to do. You could sort of create your own collections, and then to win British Hairdresser of the Year, you have to first of all be nominated, and the people that nominate you are people in the hairdressing industry. So it's other hairdressers, it's other people from beauty magazines, fashion magazines, hairdressing magazines, other people that are influential in the industry. So for a long time, you sort of think, how do you get nominated for this? And a lot of that goes down to networking and meeting people. So this goes right back to the early stages of my career when I first started. And some of those people I met then will have, everybody's been on a different journey in their career. And so people will have watched mine. And I think when you get to a point where maybe they think you're worthy of being nominated, that's what happens. But so basically in 2019 that happened, and I got nominated. But the process up to that point, I would say, is probably the whole of my career. So it's not just the salons and the business, it's all the other stuff I'd done. So that's like loads of hair shows and events and seminars and teaching, all the different things that I'd kind of really thrown myself into. And then the salons obviously are just another thing on top of that.
But then does obviously on the night you have to put a show together, and is that good towards whether you get
so what happens, you create a collection of looks that embody your type of work, and also represent what British hairdressing is about, and also promotes hairdressing to clients and consumers.
So you're actually working on.
So you do all that before,
Oh,
yeah.
right.
So you do all that before. So I've been nominated again this year. So I've got to do that I'm doing it on the 1st of August, the shoot for this year. So you build this idea.
Oh, does that come up on screen then?
Yeah. So and that's judged beforehand by all the judges.
Right.
And then on the night, it's quite a big event at the Grosvenor House in London, and we do like a hair show there. So that's just bringing the collection you created to life in front of the people that are watching. But at that point, it's all been judged and decided anyway. So that's really just from an entertainment perspective for hairdressers, and also for press and media that are there watching the event.
Yeah.
They get to know the style of hairdressing and what you're doing. So so that's what's involved in the process of it. And then so 2019, I did all of that, and I did my collection, and then it was the first time I'd been nominated, and then I won it that year as well. So it was
Has anybody else done that? Been nominated first time and won it first time?
A couple, yeah. Some people have, not loads and loads. And there's some people, like there's a guy that's been nominated for like 22 years and never won it. So dear. I don't think I was popular with those people when that happened. But anyway, it is what it is, and I was obviously really grateful and happy that happened. So I won. It was in November of 2019, but then we went into 2020, and of course lockdowns and the whole COVID.
So you couldn't promote.
Well, in a weird way, actually, it was. It wasn't that I couldn't promote myself so much, because in some ways hairdressing was never talked about as much as that period, because everybody couldn't get into salons, so everybody was talking about what they do with their hair, and actually some sales of like home dye and clippers and things like that, they kind of rocketed during the lockdown period, because everybody was trying to do things themselves at home. But a lot of
which
media,
is one of your bugbears, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not. Well, I mean, obviously people do what they need to do to look after their hair, but particularly home hair colour, you can end up in a mess.
You wanted to get your hands on Holly Willoughby's hair,
yeah,
apparently, because she dyes her own.
Yeah, yeah. Well, she's got a contract with one of the. I'm not sure which brand it is actually, but one of the brands that promote home hairdressing and home hair colour. So, yeah, anything like that, it obviously takes people away from visiting salons. So
has she not been in touch then? Because I know you've put it out there.
Yeah,
you'll have to go and get your hands on it. And
actually, like people like that, though, I mean, she'll make a fortune from that contract she has with them.
She could be a first $5,000 cut, mate.
Yeah. Oh, we'll have to talk about that in a bit. No, Mel's going to be my first $5,000 cut. I've told you that already. So I've lost my track. What we were talking about before that. So, lockdown. So basically, actually, there was loads of media opportunities, more than I expected. It was just all on Zoom, that was an interest and stuff on radio, and you couldn't really get to see people properly. But from an advice perspective, there was absolutely loads of stuff I did then. And probably more so than the second time I won it, because it's all sort of died down and got back to normal now, really. But basically, when you win it, you're then regarded as like an ambassador for the hairdressing industry. So you've got to speak on behalf of the hairdressing industry and promote it in a positive way. Yeah. And that's kind of part of the responsibility that comes with it. But obviously, then you can choose to try to monetize it by put it into products, or whatever you do with a product company. So in my case, I work with Weller, and that's one of the things that strengthened the relationship I have with
Did it miss a year or
no? So they did. So I won 2019,
yeah.
And then 2020 they still did it, but it was virtual. It was a virtual event, and I didn't win it that year, and I won it the year after.
Right.
And it was a hairdresser that's from London called Sally Brooks who won it the year in between. It was somebody I know.
Yeah.
Also.
So which were your favourite? 19 or 22?
19 was...
it's got to be a first then.
Yeah. Because then I think it was quite... Because I went with no expectations of winning it. I was just glad to be part of the lineup of names and people. So when I did win it, it was great.
In hairdressing industry, there's lots of different routes that you can go off. This what you've just been saying about barbering and...
Yeah, and I think actually now, there was a point where people were trained to become what we call like an all-rounder, so that you could do a bit of everything. Whereas now it's a bit more about specialising in certain areas. So you'll get specialists in hair colour, but not just hair colour. You'll get specialists in people who do grey blending, or people who do balayage work. So it's even broken down into categories like that, and people can be busy just doing that all the time. And I think, if that works for people, that's amazing. And you found your niche, your specialism, and you can really excel in that area. You can market yourself as being that specialist. Whereas before, and certainly when I trained, it was more about learning everything, and
Yeah.
I wanted to learn everything about it. And there's some parts I enjoy more than others, but I'm still glad I've learned everything.
Have you got your own technique for? Is it grey blending?
So what happened with grey blending?
You go along the hairline and
Yeah.
stagger it.
Yeah. Where have you read all of this stuff from? You've obviously been on the internet looking at stuff.
No, it's just on top of my head.
Yeah. No, basically, the grey blending concept came about through lockdown. Actually,
Did you kind of?
Well, yeah. Alongside Weller, we sort of pioneered and championed this idea of embracing natural hair texture. Now, we were actually working on this before lockdown hit, because there was a movement called grombre, which is basically where people grow out their hair colour, and it's kind of
It goes like out of condition when they do that, doesn't it?
well. So let's just say somebody's been colouring their hair for years and years with like a brown hair dye. So they might have been colouring their hair since they were 20, and they get to perhaps 50 or 60, still using the same kind of hair colour that might look right when they're 20 or 30, but now just doesn't look right at all.
Yeah.
And they've got really heavy regrowth. And that can sometimes be more ageing than actually working with what your own hair is doing underneath all the hair colour. So this was an idea that actually, look, this is working with your own hair colour. It doesn't mean no hair colour at all, but it's just colouring your hair in a different way, and it's reassessing what you do. And this also hit at the same time as lockdown started. So basically people couldn't get into salon. Yeah. People couldn't get into salons for like 4 months or so. So actually that trend turned into like something that was massive that everybody talked
There
about.
was somebody on telly once that did an advert, and I can remember it now. I don't know who she was. I think she was American.
Yeah.
And I seen this advert, and she'd left her hair like that.
Yeah.
It had all grown out.
Well, it almost became cool to do it. So a lot of celebrities started doing it. And then that's then related into what we see in salons. But the negative for salons is that hair salons or hairdressers, wherever they work, rely on people having their hair coloured or cut. So if somebody's not doing that, it's a huge part of the market that's missing. And then from a product company perspective, Weller, L'Oreal, all of the big names, saw a decrease in professional hair colour because people weren't visiting salons because some of them were embracing this natural hair colour trend. So what happened on the back of that is Weller launched a new range of colours called True Grey, and it was all designed to work with these clients that were growing their hair out but still gave them options with hair colour that was low commitment but still drove them to salons. So it basically kind of came off the back of a trend that then turned into something that was a business idea that then led on to people hopefully spending more money in salons again.
How long was both your salons shut for? You know, in total?
I think it was like about 8 or 9 months in total. But even so, we had the full lockdowns, which were a bit of a nightmare. Really, obviously, you can't. As you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, you went with hairdressing. Your skills are in your hands, and it's a practical craft that you learn and what you deliver to clients. There's only so much you can do online. So we could post products out and do that kind of thing, but that's limited what you could actually do through that period. So we had the full lockdown, but then when we reopened, the restrictions that were in place were so difficult to work around. So
that's what
we had to take about 50%.
Question,
we had to take about 50% of the chairs out. We could only have 50% of the team working at certain times. We had to have different shifts. The PPE that people had to wear, which
I remember you saying that.
I totally get why, but masks, plastic gowns, these capes that people had to wear. It was just a bit of a nightmare period, really, because some of the things that we had to do, unlike we all had to do, but if I talk about specifically the hairdressing industry and what we had to do in our salons, just really slowed everything down.
The thing is, you're raring to go as well.
The capacity to do loads was there.
So you're a caged animal for like 8 months, and there were going to be a massive volume. You were going to be booked up. Yeah. But when you started, and then it just made it so hard for you, didn't it?
Well, yeah.
First day had been all right.
Yeah. Well, if we could have just got on with it, we'd have got through the waiting list quicker, and everybody would have been happier quicker. But what was happening is we'd got these waiting lists of people, and there were long waiting lists. Everybody wanted to come in on the first day, which is impossible. Some people we couldn't even get in for like 2-3 months.
Did you draw lots to see who come in?
Well, we tried to do it so that whoever had the appointment first and got cancelled first, we did it in order. Sometimes it was just who contacted us as well, and like, you know, people who wanted to be put on the list. I tried during lockdown. I tried to phone. I did phone every single client that we had to stay in touch at least once or twice.
Oh, brilliant.
Which was really time consuming, but I had nothing to do, so I thought
Yeah.
I'd still do it. And people did appreciate that as well. So I sort of created these lists of people, high priority clients, people that who weren't as bothered. So it kind of helped us when we got round to rebooking people back in again. But it was, just a really difficult time.
And how did you go on with? Obviously, you didn't qualify for grants, did you? Or you missed
So we
them
did
or
no,
something?
we did in Barnsley, but not in Leeds. So the rateable value was higher in Leeds. To begin with, there was restrictions as to who could have these grants and who couldn't. As it went on, we did, but it was obviously something that happened very quickly, and things had to be put in place quickly.
Were your landlord okay?
Yeah. So the one in Leeds eventually was, but it was a lot of it was the unknown as well.
Yeah.
And again, that's the same with everybody. Nobody knew how long it was going to go on for, and as much as we had reserves to keep us going for a while, we didn't know what was going to happen with it. And anyway, we've kind of navigated our way through it, and still here now. And if anything, I think it's probably made us stronger. Although people think the aftermath of something like that's it's finished and it's gone, but it can go on for quite a few years.
So, Rob, your favourite haircut, the bob. So I've so I've heard. What does the bob mean? How did it come about? Do you know?
So it's not just, there's lots of haircuts alike, but that is like a classic that's always going to be around. It can be adapted to suit so many different people, so many different face shapes, so many different hair textures, and it's one that we just do in the salon loads and loads. A lot of the more precision work has come from the Vidal Sassoon era and how that impacted the hairdressing industry, not just in the UK but like globally. It was one of the biggest sort of movements in hairdressing that changed things massively. And over recent years, I mentioned earlier on, hair lengths have just got longer. People have grown their hair out longer. It's become I guess more fashionable to just wear longer hairstyles, which is less about a haircut and more about how you style it and colour and products and things like that. But a bob is something that it can be adapted to suit so many different people.
First come about around about 1920s, didn't it?
Well, that's when it was. Yeah, that was kind of real classic shit. But the Sassoon era is when it was really kind of expanded upon, and
apparently it means short.
Yeah,
bob. It's a 17th century word for short. I've looked it
I love
up.
all these notes he's looking for.
Because I looked it up this morning. No, I saw you. I saw an interview, and you were saying that it's your favourite cut, and it just got me thinking. I thought, well, what does it mean, bob? And then so I had a look, and it said it's a 17th century word for short.
Yeah, I mean, if some of these shapes, I mean, they've been around for many, many, many years. It's just that there's certain key points in time where they become the more fashionable, and I think we're moving back into a haircut era as well. Actually,
I always had bob.
Did you?
Yeah, when I had hair in 80s.
Have you had it perms?
In 80s.
Yours was curly anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I used to have it spiraled.
Yeah, spiraled. Imagine you with.
But I used to just shove it back like that, so it went like that. Probably had a mullet as well, but it's one of them things. But so. I think we're up to hour mark, so we said we'd keep it down to an hour. So I'll wrap it up by we'll just talk about when we went away. We'll talk about this $5,000 haircut.
Yeah.
When we went away to Benidorm earlier on in the year, we had a few drinks, and I just got this notion in my head, because Rob works really, really hard. His times. Is time poor at the minute.
Yeah.
Is money rich and time poor. Just because he's got so many projects on things. So what I said, right, what you need to do is put your prices up for your haircuts. And then I thought about it, £1,000, and I thought, why can't Rob be first hairdresser to have a $5,000 haircut, and then that'd get rid of a certain element of people. And I know Rob's going to say he don't want to, but then one $5,000 haircut would cover him for about 20 haircuts that he'd do that week.
Yeah.
So that gives him a bit more time back to to concentrate on his salon. So I was doing videos saying that he was going to be doing first £5,000 haircuts, and then I was telling people that he had done £5,000 haircuts, and they were like, "Who'd pay £5,000 for an haircut?" Then I thought, well, these millionaires, they'd pay.
Yeah, there is people that
They'll
would
fly
pay
you out and pay,
Yeah.
and pay, because double hairdresser a year. Do you know what I mean? You get in. You
Yeah, I think the concept of what you're talking about absolutely makes sense.
But not
I just
£5,000.
I think the number £5,000 is, you know, it's a lot of money. I mean, God, that'd be amazing to that one day.
There's always got
it's
to be
good
a
to have,
first person.
it's
to
good
do
to
it,
set
isn't
yourself
there?
a goal. And like I've said a few
Yeah.
times,
Andrew Barton will be doing it now.
Yeah.
He'll be doing it.
And like we said, Mel can definitely be the first
Mel's
person.
going to be first person, because I'll have to pay.
She might be the first and only one that pays it. But no, I think the concept of what you're talking about is true. And I think, like in all industries, and I'm sure with what you do as well.
This is what the basis was. It was kind of
charge more and do less, and
and then have more time to yourself. So it were, like I said, we joked about it, but it was basically a business narrative. So so I looks like I'm going to be first five. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. It's been a pleasure. If anybody wants to get in contact with you, Rob, how will they do that?
You can follow me on Instagram. So it's Robert J. Eaton. You can find me on Facebook as well, or just through the salon. So the salon address is russelleatonhair.com. It's an online booking system, and just get in touch. We're happy to chat to anybody.
So it's been a pleasure to have Rob here, and we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much.
Thanks
mate.
a lot. Thanks, Sal.
Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, it's been good.